welcome in this morning national baseball writer from ESPN, Marley Rivera, the brilliant Marley Rivera. How are you?
I'm good. I'm going to have to, give you some money under the table for the brilliant part. I really appreciate you having me on, and I'm sorry that it's taken us so long to finally do this.
It's always so great to talk to you. And obviously, speaking of brilliant women, I think it's fitting that your avatar on Twitter changed to Justice Ruth Bader Ginsberg, who, of course, recently passed away. Your thoughts on her?
Well, obviously, the reason that a lot of us women are where we are and the reason that we have the rights that we do is because of people like RBG. So obviously, her loss has been a great loss for humanity. It isn't a loss for women. It isn't a loss for American women. It is a loss for humanity. So hopefully there'll be some people that step up and continue her legacy. But at this point, I have to say that I'm not that hopeful, Bobby. But the world sometimes surprises you. And if there's one thing that Ruth Bader Ginsberg taught us is that you really shouldn't underestimate what people can do.
Yeah, I mean, Marley, I think she is a cultural icon. I actually thought it was interesting that the NBA didn't do more for her. I know one of your colleagues, Rachel Nichols, of course, signifying that the NBA should have done a lot more for her in their tributes in the NBA bubble in the postseason, and just obviously sad passing. Another sad note here for 2020.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen it. I happened to be at Fenway Park when the Yankees, as you know, were there. And they did put her face in the scoreboard and a small tribute to her. But it's really hard. And to be fair, right, and I completely agree with Rachel. Let's go on the record with that. But to be fair, it is a difficult thing to do, right? Like in this very difficult time of coronavirus, and we think about the bubbles and just these guys trying to focus to honor someone that is so significant in history. It just really, it's a very difficult thing to do. It happened, with Congressman John Lewis last year, right, when we saw the flags flying at half mast and everything on, and you think, oh, it's John Lewis. He deserves, a day, at least minimum of recognition all throughout sports, and it didn't happen. So it is a tough thing to do, but certainly I wish he had been recognized more.
Marley, speaking also of other legends, as someone that was born in Puerto Rico, just recently, Major League Baseball got an opportunity to once again honor Roberto Clemente on September 9th. I think a nice tweet for you on Twitter as well, saying about how your career would not have been made possible without the contributions that Roberto made to Major League Baseball. One of the things that stood out for me, though, a great tribute again to him, the 19th anniversary, is just that MLB still has lagged behind in terms of maybe pushing forward to finally retire number 21. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, it's a very difficult subject. And Bobby, you know me. I have never been someone that doesn't express her opinion. And I've never been someone who shies away from criticizing Major League Baseball. So I have no problems at all doing that. So, so this caveat doesn't come, colored by anything else, but actually my opinion. It's a hard thing to do to retire a number. It's a very difficult thing to do. And the only number retired all throughout baseball is number 42. And we know exactly why. We know the reason why the game is what it is today is because of Jackie Robinson. The reason why Roberto Clemente had a chance to even play and all these wonderful players from the Negro Leagues then were integrated, some of them, right? We know we lost a lot of them. Then the fact was because of Jackie Robinson. So some people believe, I am not in that list, that kind of retiring another number would diminish maybe, right? Recognizing the way Robinson is recognized all throughout baseball. So Major League Baseball has to come to terms with that. And that is a difficult thing to do. But the argument that I and many of us make, and we saw, there's a campaign right now that Carlos Baerga started with a lot of Carlos Delgado, Sandy Alomar, with a lot of former Puerto Rican and current Puerto Rican baseball players and coaches who are out there giving the reasons of why 21 should be retired. And I think that's the important conversation. They need to listen to those people who firmly believe that if Roberto Clemente had not been there, the first Latino Hall of Famer, then none of them would have gotten the chance. This is something that we've heard someone like David Ortiz, right, future Hall of Famer, has said it. Something that we've heard, Roberto Alomar, a current, Hall of Famer, Pudge Rodriguez, every single Hall of Famer born in Puerto Rico, obviously except Roberto, has given full credit to Roberto Clemente to be where they are. And not only that, every single Latin major leaguer. And we've gotten to this point where almost 1/3 of baseball, it's comprised by Latin players. And there's a very, very small amount, a very small percentage of African-American players, which is a travesty. Let's be very clear that the numbers have gone down for Black and African-American players. It's a travesty. and it has happened at the growth of, of the players that they have found very cheaply, right, in Latin America. And those are the players that make this game. When we sit down and I ask you or I ask Chris or I ask anybody, right, of our friends, of our colleagues, please name your top 5 favorite players. I can guarantee you that at least 2 or 3 of those are going to be Latin players. And Fernando Tatis and Juan Soto and Ronald Acuna, Ronaldo, that's actually his name, but Ronald Acuna, those guys would not be there because of Roberto Clemente, which means that the game that we enjoy and that we love today, with all these Latino players, that has gotten a little bit controversial with the whole let kids play, it's because of Roberto Clemente, and that is why. Right? That is the reason why it should be, in my opinion, retired and recognized as such. But it is a hard decision for Major League Baseball, and at no point it should be seen as diminishing the contributions of 42.
I totally agree. And I also always thought it was interesting how so many people say that, they can't retire his number because he's not the first Latin player. I think he's the most significant of all the Latin players.
Well, not only that, he also is the first Latin player who got into the Hall of Fame, right, into Cooperstown. He opened that door. We know that there's a lot of issues with the list of players that have been inducted to Cooperstown. People can be in shock sometimes when they see the lack of diversity, right, that has happened for basically more than a century, right, in Cooperstown. So the representation of the game that you can see in the village of Cooperstown and in the Baseball Hall of Fame, which is one of the greatest places in the world, it really does not reflect our game today. It doesn't. That is the truth. So when you go in there, like the way we joke around is there's a lot of dead white guys. And we don't mean that in a diminishing way. We mean it that we also have to honor all the other guys that have made our game as diverse as it is today.
When you combine how great a player he was, the contributions as a humanitarian, I know so many of our Latin colleagues have also made the comments that, that first appearance in the World Series and Roberto being on national television and making a point to speaking in his native language, those sort of contributions, I think, up the ante when it comes to significance in his place in Major League Baseball.
And not only that, Roberto exemplifies in many ways the plight of all players of color, right? He was, when he first came to the major leagues and when he was playing, before he was actually an official, everyday player, they put him as, as Rob Walker because that was his second last name. So in order to fit in, he was that guy who spoke with a very thick accent and was made fun of, right? So he really does exemplify, all these things that that we've heard now, the Tony Perez's of the world, right? Of these guys, these Latin guys, Rod Carew, right? I'm trying to mention guys who are not Puerto Rican in order to be a little bit fair here. But these guys that have said that he stood up there and took the heat. He stood up there and, and was that guy who was a superstar with very bad English, right? And with very, very dark skin in the city of Pittsburgh. So it's a very interesting, right, dynamic what he did. And he laid that path for all these guys now that are continuing. We talked about it recently, Bobby, that have continued to deal with all these racial tensions and issues, right, and inequality.
I think it's hard to believe, too. I mean, it was 14 years ago now, being in Pittsburgh for the All-Star game and joining Julio Pavone to have, people trying to sign petitions to retire 21. And it's still a movement that's, continuing to go on.
Well, because it's not a movement that can happen between people, right? It isn't, you can, and also it's not a movement that can only be, right? Like, to be very clear, this movement can't only be about Latin players because then it doesn't, everybody in baseball, every single fan in baseball and player in baseball idolizes, right? Like, let's be very clear. If you don't idolize them, at least you admire what Jackie Robinson did, right? Period. You admire what Jackie Robinson did. It's clear. That has not gotten to Roberto Clemente. So this is about education. So once you educate the public, because it isn't only about the people who already know about Roberto's legacy, those people know about it. You don't need to tell them the reasons why Roberto's number should be retired. It's about educating the rest of the populace. Those people are the ones who need to know that Roberto Clemente's number needs to be retired. And until they know that, it's not going to happen. It is a decision that needs to come at the level of the executive level of Major League Baseball. And if most people don't agree with it, it's never going to happen. You need a little bit of push. A whole bunch of Latin people, and Latin players requesting something ain't going to get anything done. So it has to be a very widespread movement to even make a dent.
That was part 1 of our interview with baseball guru Marley Rivera. Tune in Monday for part 2.